Hello and welcome to D-SETI. This talk is called Finding Meaning in Anomalous Geometry. It is a video in the Universal Language video series. If you don't know what anomalous geometry is, marks upon the body, crop circles, or ruler and compass geometry, please do start at the beginning of this series. It'll give you a lot of context that is necessary to understand what we're talking about. I want to just talk a little bit about the geometric marks I'm curious about, as well as the ethics and epistemology associated with this inquiry, talk about some research projects, and invite you to work with me. So in this series we've talked about anomalous marks on the body, crop circles, UAP sightings, and Renaissance codes that all seem to express universal language that is very, very clearly geometric. So there are possible sources of geometric messages: marks on the body, UAP sightings, crop circles, graphable radio transmissions, time series data, and map data. Basically, any type of data, we can start to do geometric analysis to it. And the characteristics of the geometry that we're talking about is perfect circles. There's regular intervals. Everything needs to be relatable in proportion to a unity figure. This is saying this is number one, this is what one is, two is this, right? Like golden ratio is that, and so we reduce it back to that unity, radius, or interval. That will be obvious in the communication. We won't have to look for it very hard, and it contains clues for its own decodement. It involves straight lines, involves meaningful proportions like whole number ratios, or physical constants like the golden ratio, or in the case of like Orion's belt and the Giza pyramids, those numbers are very important too. It's also pregnant with a feeling or intuition of message saying like this is important, this is meaningful. So that is also present. Often I had that experience with my dots in a line phenomena, where I was like, this is meaningful, I know this, I could analyze the geometry one day. How to do it, I don't actually know. And in this series, I've revealed that my dreams taught me that geometry to decode it. The characteristics of anomalous geometry I'm looking for may be associated with CE5 or human-initiated contact. So if there's some general level of invitation or experience there with CE5, that's really interesting to me, because I feel that these highly geometrical communications, the dots in a line involving these ruler and compass method of construction, really do come out of CE5 context, or from people who have a sort of general orientation of consent to respectful and non-harmful interactions with non-human intelligences. That's the type of context it's coming out of. The abduction marks are interesting to me, but I haven't seen as much rich language of geometry. They may be associated with entity dreams or feelings of entity presence. Again, there seems to be an early typology associated with tall grays, the skin of which resolves to tan, associated with hybridization programs. This may or may not be a bias at this point, but there is a definite association with entity dreams, especially with red grid mark, especially, I mean, it's almost one for one with the dial dots in the line, as well as with crop circles. There's enough kind of tangential evidence. Same thing with CE5 or UAP sightings. Entity dreams are a side effect or correlate of those experiences. They may be associated with missing time episodes or abduction style narratives, like there's an ET in the room, you lose your memory, there's a kind of feeling of scratching or whatever, you lost some time. Stuff like that may be associated or not. It's generally associated with an intuition of meaning. Generally that comes from seeing the regularity of the pattern, or else going, this is meaningful because it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's also constellated with other aspects of the phenomena. For me, that's interpersonal synchronicity. So the analysis method I use here involves constructing the geometry. I print out the photos, I connect the dots, the straight lines, etc. find the unity radius for the circle that describes regular intervals or grid patterns or the circle. This is the essential feature of ruler and compass geometry, because all the other things you draw come back to reference to this original circle. So everything comes out of this unity circle, everything resolves back to it. It's a very beautiful metaphor for how consciousness expresses throughout this whole universe. I test for whole number multiples or fractions of unity, like 1/4, 1/8, 1/16. That shows up a lot. 5 if there's 5 elements, 8 if there's 8 elements, right? You go like, huh. And they use those, they give clues. Number of dots, divide up unity by that, you'll find a meaningful interval, a ratio. I also test for meaningful constants like the golden ratio. I also test for geometric figures like the standard constructions of the polygons. That's generally using flower of life or these other construction methods. I usually use the simplest construction method, and that also reveals a lot. I also test for the Platonic solids and things like that. So once the geometry is constructed, it needs to be very, very simple steps, right? And I'll talk about that in a moment. I then make the geometry and scale to the photo, and I lay the geometry over the photo. Therefore, I say, hey, this is congruent or not. I go through a process of discernment around that. I consider the number of steps and the complexity of the figure, complexity of the steps. If I'm taking a number, doing it to golden ratio, timesing it by 8, dividing by 2, doing a golden ratio again, I'm making stuff up. But if I take the number and do golden ratio, multiply it by 2, there you go. Or if I draw a circle used in the construction of the golden ratio and it reveals other points within there, if I draw flower of life on it and I go, oh, this is all lined up, it's clearly mathematical, right? So generally they're simple, elegant, and include clues to their own construction. And another quality is that their construction, or the most elegant construction method, actually has hints to it in the geometry itself. So that's one of the other things I'm looking for. This is an example of a geometric analysis used in congruent testing. This is my dots in a line phenomena. Here's an example, red grid mark phenomena. You can see I used the flower of life to generate a hexagonal grid pattern and then did an alternating diamond fill-in. So there's an analysis there. I love seeing what I can see here. But I can, in the analysis, I offer the ruler and compass method analysis and then interpretation on top of it. Here's an example of a crop circle that mystified me until I decoded dots in a line and became cued into certain golden section constructions. I really like doing the crop circles, and I've done dozens of them. So I want to talk about ethics and epistemology here. So these are dream or dreamlike experiences, not necessarily historic objective events. So the body marks I assume, are related to dreams via similar mechanisms to stigmata, unless otherwise stated by the experiencer. There's some precedent within the dream studies literature or lore saying that this is possible. So I assume that this is something like stigmata, unless someone tells me different, unless they say, I remember in waking phase consciousness E.T. piercing my skin. I go, oh, okay, then that sounds real to me. You're telling me I'm going to honor your authority as the dreamer to tell me the significance of your own experience. Like, I'm going to do that, but generally I assume that these are sort of stigmata-like experience, unless otherwise stated. Same thing goes with like crop circles or red grid mark and things like that. The ethics that are really involved with working with dreams and dreamlike things is respect of dreamer as the final authority regarding interpretation and significance of the dream. So you have an experience, you talk to me. I'm not going to tell you, oh, no, that's not right. Like something else must have happened. I go, okay, you're telling me. I'm not supposed to be super skeptical around what your dreamlike experiences are, because those are your own dreamlike experiences and only you can report on it. So I can talk about themes, objective themes of interpretation, how it relates to dream studies literature, how these geometries relate to something else, but you get to say, you're the final authority of interpretation. The respect of the dream as a multidimensional source of meaning applies to these marks too, right? So we're not saying this is what it means, this is what the message is. This is not Morse code. This is art, and art has many layers of interpretation, only one of which is this sort of objective or a priori geometric testing, right? And then the final ethical principle is that the study of dreams and dreamlike reports requires the researcher to do their own dream work. So this won't make sense to you unless you're working with your dreams. The geometry won't make sense to you unless you're actually working with a ruler and compass method of geometry, because that's how we engage both aspects of the logical and creative aspects of our minds. Then the epistemology is important to understand. This dream reports are non-dual and are subjective narratives. They don't serve as historic evidence. The geometric analysis supports but does not prove claims regarding intelligence and intention of the mark makers. Much more needs to come in. I would say doing congruence testing of these geometric figures in the context of discernment proves for the individual who understands ruler and method geometry that it is an intentional communication. If you're not educated in this original kind of universal geometry, that is not a problem. It takes only an hour or two to understand, but it's been sort of systematically pushed away from our own mathematical and scientific cultures. So if you're watching this video series and not doing geometry, you've absolutely missed the point. And you will not, this is not proof. You've actually not engaged in any proof or anything. You actually have to take some of these images, find some your own. You can work with me and email me and do the proofs, do the constructions, and then that's proof for you and proof for anyone else who's educated in this very basic and universal language of mathematics that there are intelligent messages being communicated in these anomalous ways. And if you understand the subtext of language and the implications here, I'm very glad because it is obvious and clear what level of communication is happening when you are educated with these very simple methods. It is really questionable as to why we as a culture do not teach our children these methods of geometry, considering that they are a universal and basic language. It seems to me almost to be an intentional communication itself on the part of our culture or some elements in our culture in control of the public school curriculum that really is unfortunate and causing harm. So yes, that's really important to understand. There is an epistemology that we need to engage here, and that the people who are seeking proof for intelligent communications really do need to be educated in the ruler and compass methods of geometry. All right, that's a lot. I want to talk, if you're interested in working with me or doing geometric analysis on your own anomalous body marks, you have to produce some documentation. And the documentation can be very, very simple. Just use photographs. Do what you're inspired to do. But please do try to get multiple photographs from multiple different angles, in multiple lighting situations, using multiple different types of cameras. Including video would be wonderful, and take photos over several days to document the healing process that gives clues to what actually is there, what the mechanisms of application are, and things like that. If your skin moves or becomes taut or loose or in the mark when you move, you may need to relax. Take photos in taut, relaxed, and neutral phases. You may actually need some help to photograph it. I know that will take you time, but that will take the geometer, that will save the geometer hours of time, is if we can get clear reasonable, relaxed photos of these things. In addition, you've got a story, so record as much as you can or like. If it's a dream, use the first person present tense to narrate the encounter or the dream like you're telling a story. Document any CE5 requests that you might have made. Document your feelings before, during, and after discovery and at later times, because that's helpful to see how you're integrating. Document your own interpretation and understanding. This is very, very essential, because these dreams or dreamlike experiences will give us clues as to who these beings are, what their intelligences are, and how they're expressed in the world, and what the messages actually are. So, which may be the dream experience you just had. And then finally, be creative. So dreamwork involves both logical analysis and intuitive, creative, playful expressions. So once you have your objective record, you feel satisfied with it, be creative. Art, music, dance is great. Use both sides of the brain and engage in the dreamwork practices you may be familiar with to find meaning in these dreamlike experiences or communications. All right, if you want to work with me for a geometric analysis of any of these things, please email me at daniel@D-SETI with photos and a description of the experience and your desire for analysis. I will invite you, I will respond with some initial thoughts and may invite you to schedule a consultation or interview. If I do see geometry that I want to analyze, I will provide or may provide a geometric analysis free of cost. Generally, this is my intention. You then may choose to support me in the working by commissioning an artistic rendition of the geometric analysis or scheduling a dreamwork session with me. You could work with me through dreamwork and hypnosis. I have a variety of techniques based in hypnosis, regression techniques that are then understood in the context of dreamwork, which seems to be the only appropriate scientific stance regarding regression hypnosis. We'll start with a no obligation consultation and we'll talk about the process, and you can learn more at dseti.org. I do want to invite research collaborations too to collect, document, and analyze photos and dream reports reported related to anomalous body markings, such as the general abduction marks, the red grid mark phenomenon. There's a wonderful Facebook group about that. We are engaged in a dream survey. There's a lot. There's thousands of these images. We need a database. We need a database and consistent typologies of these things. I'm not sure if people realize that the diamond red grid mark is the same mathematical idea as the hexagonal circle grid. Like that's where we're at with it. There's clear typographies. They need to be defined, and taxonomies and things like that. So need help with that. Also, facilitating CE5 style experiments or dream groups or something like that. This seems to be a communicative phenomenon. So let's communicate. And then I'd love to talk about your research that may benefit from geometric analysis or dreamwork. I love talking about these things. Some of this whole inquiry really was inspired by sharing papers, sharing academic papers with classmates of mine. There's a beautiful paper about balls of light crop circle creators and that analysis of that, and the analysis that the ball of light crop circle indicates that the crop circle makers are intelligent and capable of certain qualities. I thought was a brilliant analysis and is some of the basis for the theory here. So I just love talking about that and sharing information. So you can get in touch with me at daniel@dseti.org. What does this all mean? I mean, so the ruler and compass construction and congruence testing of anomalous body marks, crop circles, and other data like radio or UAP sightings implies the following. We're dealing with geometric objects, mathematical objects, not accidents or artifacts of physical encounters or procedures. That the mark makers are intelligent and presumed to be life like we know it. They might be sneaky humans or dream entities or ETs, we don't know. But there is, for me, a strong correlation between meaningful dream images and psionic experiences and things like that. They seem to be observant and have an effective theory of our mind, meaning that they can interpret appropriately intent requests that they understand our level of understanding of geometry and are giving us the basics. And they express through objective, interpersonal, and subjective means of communication. That means dream, art, they're all mixed together, and so that means there's a really holistic, integral, and creative intelligence behind this. That seems to me to be the core of the human spirit. The association with CE5 and intentional contact means that they are contacting us back, that we are in the later stages of a documented and meaningful conversation, the documentation of which exists in thousands of photographs of UAPs or marks on the body that people don't know how to make sense of. They go, I don't know, we don't know, does this make sense, is this real? Go like, do some geometry. We'll just get a database of geometric communications that are undeniably geometric and clearly not artifacts of physical, accidental artifacts of physical encounters that are clear expressions of this creative, holistic, and integral intelligence. We could likely then determine much more about the nature of communication should we start taking these things seriously and following the guidance that we receive when we work with ruler and compass and congruence testing, right? This is really the important thing to come away from the experience is you have to do this work. The proof doesn't happen out there by scientists and geometers. It actually happens based on the Euclid's Book 1, Proposition 4, the equality of two equal triangles. You actually have to do that with your mind, and then you understand that the communication of the anomalous body mark is actually a geometric object that you are receiving in non-local ways through what we have in the past term a priori faculties of mind. But it's actually a communication, and it's really, really, I mean, I keep cycling around this, but it's just to inspire you to spend literally like the hour it takes to learn ruler and compass methods of construction, to go through some of these constructions, and to go through a congruence test or two so that you understand we're dealing with geometry. You have that lived experience. That's really, really important. That's the point of this. This comes out of the context of D-SETI, which stands for either Dream Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence or Dream Studies, depending on your perspective. It's important to know that it's triggering, taboo, and projection-prone. Dreamwork, ET contact, all of this. So please be mindful. D-SETI offers the work of me, Daniel Rekshan, in dreamwork sessions, that hypnosis, and education regarding these topics. I hold a master's in East-West psychology, certificate in hypnotherapy. I'm a PhD student in integral noetic science. I have a liberal arts degree in the history and philosophy of math and science. So I love working with others. So you might want to check out dseti.org to deepen your education or dreamwork journey. So this is quite a journey. Thank you for being on it with me. I'm really excited to see the next steps of communication. This whole experience, this whole inquiry was guided and inspired by dream experiences that were very, very real dream experiences, invited me and taught me how to see this, do these constructions, and talk about this. This has been a path of engagement for several years now, and this expression, this understanding comes up and out of it. I can't make claims to it. And this is very similar to Robert Louis Stevenson, how he said his dream brownies, so like dream fairies or gnomes or whatever, brownies, came up with all of his plots and would give it to him in dreams, and he would just read it and write it out. And that when he needed some money or something like that, or a new novel, he would ask the dream brownies, and in a week or two they would give him a whole story that he found surprise in. And I'm sharing that context. This is my own experience. I'm discovering this almost as we go along. I'm being guided with the dreams. I go, oh, geometry is wonderful to learn. Of course I'll learn it. the dream people are telling me to. That sounds like fun. Let's do that. And then within a week and a half, I've decoded my own dots on the line marking as well as a half a dozen others, and seem to have discovered kind of like a universal language of communication that many other people are discovering too. I go, this isn't a mistake. We're being guided in this. If we as a society start opening up to that guidance, it seems like we will, in respectful and non-harmful ways, move towards a flourishing of a holistic and integral human being on this planet Earth in kind and gentle ways. And I see that we can move into control or mastery of technologies derived from some of these geometries by some of these messages, that we can embody technological capabilities that we are seeing in the UAP crafts or the crop circle formations or the marks on the body. The intelligence is like we know it, communicating in ways that reference a theory of mind that is effective, in ways that are creative and personally meaningful to the experiencers, as well as objectively and geometrically meaningful. And therefore, I kind of assume that we are capable of understanding the intelligences and technologies involved with making these things, that we will be guided into the understanding of the technologies used in making these things, and that it will not be that difficult because the communications are tuned to our frequency. They are tuned to our frequency so that we may understand them, discover them, and be moved by them like we are moved by art. And I'm very hopeful about that. I think it's incredible. And I just hope that by the end of this series, you feel very much inspired to learn ruler and compass geometry. It's only going to take an hour or two. You should go to Wikipedia right now and go through some of those articles and go through the basic proofs, and that will be a lot of fun. Or you can sign up for an e-course with me, something like that. I don't care. Just do the math. Learn it. It'll take an hour or two. No big deal. And then that will inspire you to go on a journey for a much longer time. So once again, thank you for being here. Let's discover a beautiful, creative, communicative, universal experience of life together.